So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sirpa Zimal, and on behalf of Switzerland Global Enterprise, I would like to welcome you to this webinar. Our organization helps international companies to expand to and also to innovate in Switzerland. And today's session focuses on a topic that is rising on the agendas of international executives, and that is building digital capabilities that are resilient across jurisdictions. Companies are dealing with a patchwork of market and regulatory demand, and at the same time, they're under growing pressure to turn compliance and data sovereignty obligations into real performance drivers. So when Switzerland as a country offers an ecosystem built for this moment, with our reliable governance, deep tech expertise in AI, and also quantum infrastructure, and a strong culture of innovation. The country of Switzerland provides an ecosystem that gives companies room to innovate, but also staying in control. So over the next hour, our speakers will walk us through how sovereignty-ready digital infrastructure can be put into practice and what that means for global companies. I'm very excited about that, but first I also would like to thank our partners, HomeofBlockchain and Alp ICT, to have made this event possible. So thank you. And before we start, one quick housekeeping rule. If you have questions that come to your mind, please drop them into the chat and we'll pick them up and address them during the session. And with that, I'm happy to hand over to our moderator, Alexander Brunner, who will introduce our speakers and lead the discussion. Alexander.
Thank you very much, Sirpa, for introducing us. And it's an interesting day to have a conversation about digital sovereignty, as there's a Cloudflare outage today with a lot of the systems, including the AI systems, not working properly. So, and good timing to have a discussion about that. And the title of today's seminar is Sovereignty Ready Digital Infrastructure. So it's focusing a bit on infrastructure, but I'd like to open the scope a little bit by also looking at the ecosystem and maybe some values. So not only the hard tech aspect, but also what kind of ecosystem aspects play into that in creating digital sovereignty. And also while discussing this topic, I would like to sort of phrase digital sovereignty. It doesn't mean autarky. So it doesn't mean you want to unplug yourself from the rest of the world. We still have to work with other partners, but I think we'd like to discuss it from the lens, what kind of capabilities, skills, and even infrastructure you want to control yourself versus are controlled by someone else. So this is the way we're going to frame this discussion. And as a bit of a setting the scene, and why do I think ecosystem discussion and digital infrastructure discussion is interesting when it comes to Switzerland. Switzerland has been repeatedly named the most innovative country in the world, also by INSEAD as the global talent competitive ranking #1 in multiple years successively. So we have a lot of soft talent, obviously, a lot of innovation sort of in a research capacity and a capability. But we also have some hard infrastructure and algorithmic or tech stack capabilities we'll discuss a bit later. And why is that important? I think anyone who's been following the Nobel Prize or the Memorial Prize for Economics this year has come across the gentlemen of Philippe Aghion and Peter Howitt, as well as Joel Mokyr. And they've been laying out how you create sustainable innovation that is driving economic growth. And they heavily emphasize the role of ecosystems, of frameworks, of how you create an ecosystem that allows for research and development and experimentation, but also gives a bit of guidelines. And basically what they're, in a nutshell, finding is it's sort of bit the Goldilocks scenario. You don't want to have laissez-faire. You don't want to just let anything go crazy, because then things might go wrong, but you also don't want to be too tight. And I sort of would like to highlight the next 60 minutes with my panelists. What are Switzerland's features and how does Switzerland address innovation? I think as a setting the scene is Switzerland has never had a very top-down approach to innovation. Other countries, as you might remember, Stargate announced in early this year by President Trump and Masayoshi-san and Larry Ellison and Sam Altman, 500 billion into AI infrastructure. Even the UK makes a lot of noise about AI. France likes to do it as well. Switzerland has never done that. So Switzerland has a very bottom-up approach. And I think an approach that was quite successful recently when you looked at the rise of the crypto valley, it was based on a very decentralized sort of federal approach to innovation. And that's quite in a contrast to some of the very grand schemes you see at the moment. And I have different exponents here today that can talk about that aspect of Switzerland. They've seen the international side as well as the research side. And I'm really very much looking forward to having this discussion. And as a side, sort of, not only focus on infrastructure, but maybe also about ecosystem and values. With that, I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists. I just go according to the screens. We have from Basel, Damir Bogdan. He's been involved with what is called QuantumBasel. It's a private initiative that is creating has created a supercomputer infrastructure in collaboration with other partners. It's been an ecosystem building quantum capabilities in Basel. So I'm happy for Damir to be here as well, joining the webinar. Then we have Stef. I don't know where you're currently, normally based in Zurich, but Stef has actually worked in Silicon Valley for Google. He now came here as a Dutch citizen, starting his startup, Cradle, that is in AI and protein research here in Zurich. But I know you also have some research lab capabilities in the Netherlands. Again, a very international angle. And last but not least, I'm happy to have Professor Martin Jaggi. He's been fundamental in creating the Apertus open LLM model you might have heard about. Switzerland has developed an LLM model very based on the values I just talked about. That's been a bit in the news. And it's sort of a bit a counterpoint to the very commercial models we've seen out of the US. So with that, I'd like to kick off our panel. Now, I'll just give everyone a question first, but maybe starting with Stef, maybe just very briefly, how did you end up in Switzerland as a Danish national that spent a lot of time in the US? Why Switzerland?
I'm a very unlikely Dutchman. No, I was moving from the Bay Area back to Europe, and both me and my wife were looking at each other. We're saying, well, we're definitely not going to go back to the Netherlands. So what's the other place where we could build, an interesting company? And I think Zurich was definitely top of that list. Deep talent pool. I knew it from Google having, I think, the largest engineering office outside of the United States here in Zurich. And so, great place to build. And then, as I said, I don't like flats, I like mountains, but that's a very uncommon thing for my people.
Perfect. That's a good enough reason to come here. Actually, I've met a few founders who came to Switzerland because they like the landscape, and that's the skiing. That's fair enough. And now you're based in Zurich. Now maybe move to Basel. Basel is a pharma hub. It's one of the strong financial components of the Swiss economy. Damir, maybe just very briefly, how did Basel end up with a quantum hub? How did that come into being?
Well, that's funny enough. I as well came back from Silicon Valley, where I spent a couple of years commuting between Switzerland and Silicon Valley. And this was right before COVID. I've had conducted a workshop here at the newly built campus, where I've met as well the investor and the visionary behind Uptown Basel. And I've been talking about quantum computing. I've been talking about artificial intelligence. Everything what we saw already back in 2017 with Moore's law flattening out, quantum computing being a good addendum on classical compute power. And the investor, as you mentioned, just said that his family wants to do something against the potential deindustrialization of a nation like Switzerland. And so he asked me to develop a strategy. I did so for the campus. I'm there as well responsible for the technology. And within this strategy, I've said that, and this was back in 21, that we have to start with AI. This will be predominant in the next couple of years. And if he really wants to look ahead, and his family is long-term invested, so 2-3 decades before us, so then we also have to talk about quantum computing. And this is why then, after having handed over the strategy paper, I've also been asked if I can found the company, if I can grow the company, if I can start the company, which I did over the last couple of years.
Which is a great story because it's a private partnership, sort of a decentralized approach. It was never mandated by the government. No minister had this wonderful idea. It was your idea with private backing. Now, moving maybe from the north of Switzerland to the very west of Switzerland to Lausanne, to Professor Jaggi. LLMs are all the rage, and there's sort of two things that typically stand out. One thing is the huge sums invested into infrastructure, into chip, into data centers. Billions are not enough anymore. People now talking about trillions of dollars. And the second thing is very competitive. There are a lot of rankings, and they're constantly getting monitored. What's the fastest or the cleverest or the best LLM? So with that as a background, how did Switzerland or the EPFL end up with an idea competing, if you will, with the big American LLMs? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a similar thing. It's also kind of a bottom-up idea, not that it was planned before. I should also say it's not competing, right? We have a bit different goals, right? We stand out with slightly different values than the big tech company in our LLM project. Well, it's really also about trust and transparency and so on. Can talk a bit more about it, but it also came together because of long-term good planning and investment of research. Like every 5 years, Switzerland used to invest in new supercomputer anyway for the last 20 years, right? And just this round, the timing was really good that the machine that just came online a year ago, just in time for this AI craze, happened to be ordered like 2 years before, right? So it was really good timing, so that we ended up with the best public supercomputer in the world, kind of available to researchers, and we could play with it and try to build good open models with it.
Perfect. But I think there's always two keywords you already used. It's bottom up and values, which is very interesting. And that's come up a lot. But maybe now moving back to the startup side, Stef. I mean, one of the things that constantly get a lot of airtime in Switzerland is that there's not enough funding capital to build scalable startups. And obviously, when it comes to lab and research, resources are also key. It's not just digital bits, but you need to actually have staff and capabilities. How do you see that in Switzerland? Has that been a drag? How have you been addressing this problem of creating a big enough infrastructure and raising the capital?
Yeah, sure. I mean, having been in the Bay Area for quite a long time, I do think it's a lot easier for people to raise money there. I would say there's a lot more checks and balances in Switzerland when you talk to the financial community. I've sometimes jokingly said it's very early private equity and not actually venture capital very often. I do think you can raise from good venture capitalists that are not in Switzerland. There's a few exceptions, but most of them, I would say, are not typically the ones that will write you a big check. So we went abroad to Index Ventures in the United Kingdom, as well as sort of IVP, which is an American firm. I do think if you look at the talent pool and the potential that is here, we could have a larger ecosystem if we were to invest more of our money locally and less, abroad. So, for example, I think the Swiss National Bank holds the largest foreign portfolio of large tech companies, while we're here discussing, that we might want to be a little bit more sovereign from them. And so I do think we could accelerate the local ecosystem a lot more. We have incredibly deep science with EPFL and ETH, and that is really remarkable, right? It competes globally with commercially funded universities and outperforms them sort of every day. But we should produce more, and I think there are some unfair advantages that Switzerland has, not being in the EU, not being as restricted, as you said, in what it can do and how it can play. I think you're muted.
I didn't press hard enough. Today I came across the Deep Tech Report 2025. That's a Swiss report. And that report states that 96% of late stage funding is non-Swiss funding, sort of a bit highlighting the problem. And I know that's a very well-known problem, but I think the solutions are still debated. But maybe Damir, you have the benefit of a pride of a founder, but you're part of an ecosystem that's pharma. How would you describe what's your success formula for creating a growing quantum ecosystem? What's your strategy?
I don't know if I'm able to talk about the success formula. I can say how we did it and define success. If you ask the investor, did he get his money back, which he invested in us 3 years after that already? No. Will he get it back in perhaps 5 years? I don't think so, but at least by the end of this decade, we will have to become profitable. And this is perhaps something which has been mentioned before as well from Stef. This is another kind of investment. When you look at Silicon Valley or here, when you are privately invested, you are getting pushed hard, but at the same time, you also have a little bit more freedom to operate. So coming back to your second part of the question, how did we go for that? So first of all, as mentioned in the introduction, we are long-term thinking. So we are thinking about 10, 20 years ahead and which kind of technologies support the innovation power of Switzerland. Thomas Stechelin's family's idea is to do something against the potential deindustrialization of Switzerland. And therefore, technologies like the horse and perhaps politics are the coaches in the back, but also other companies. So we decided to pre-invest in technologies on which other companies can jump on. And having that said, we soon started to talk about quite a lot globally about the potentials of quantum computing, also the threats. It's always easier to talk about threats because the people tend to listen more, yet quantum computing is quite at the beginning. And what we found out over the last 2 or 3 years since our inception is that we are more focused now on talking about starting with AI, quantum machine learning, and then go for the next level with quantum computing. So to summarize, we've built up within this 3 years a global hub. We've got customers in Middle East. We've got customers. We are going on all different kind of markets. Yes, we have pharma here in Basel, but they as well are not the fastest moving sometimes. So we have customers like Pfizer, Syngenta we are collaborating with, but it's not so that we purely can focus on Switzerland or on Basel. And perhaps this is the last point or answer to your question. Within the vision, you have to think globally, and then you have to adapt the good ideas also from Silicon Valley, like the just do it approach instead of why should we, just say why not, and then start with something and then grow continuously. I think this is perhaps not the secret of success, but this is our game plan and this is the strategy.
That's very interesting that you're saying that, Damir. As you might know, I recently wrote a book about the Swiss AI ecosystem, and everyone I interviewed will probably sign up to what you just said. You have to think globally first when you're based in Switzerland, for the simple reason the home market with 9 million people is just not big enough. And actually, Switzerland has been doing that for many years. And maybe my last personal question, because I open a bit more up for a joint discussion. Martin, the interesting thing about Apertus, I mean, you are with EPFL in Lausanne. ETH in Zurich is very strong. There's other high schools and universities are strong in research in AI. Maybe can you explain a bit how that all fits together? It can be a bit confusing from an outsider to see all those different parts. How do you make that all work? And how do you create Apertus out of all those different contributors?
Yes, well, it's actually quite easy. So I mentioned the compute resource, the supercomputer is the thing that kind of brought everyone together and realizing that this technology is a key technology of our time now. It's so broadly applicable. It's so much impact that it's a very important thing. I mean, we are researchers as well, so we wanted to also better understand this technology. And yeah, what you cannot build, you cannot understand. So from that point of view, we also said that, okay, we really need to work together at the two ETH universities, right, in Zurich and Lausanne. So that worked really nicely, and together you make progress much faster. So that what came out of this kind of research project then became also an artifact like that people can use, an open source model, which is a bit special, right? Usually you think people just do research in the ivory tower and produce publications and so on, but I really found it exciting that we could build something that's almost a bit like a product, right? I mean, it's open source, yeah, but of course people can build commercial products on top of this as well. And we just thought that as this technology is so crucial, we want to contribute to also have models that are more transparent, that people can understand, that they can do research about, that they can audit these models to have this kind of transparency, and also to cover multilinguality. We cover every language in the world, right? So it's actually a global model, not a Swiss AI model. It covers all languages that are there, and yeah, it covers them in a neutral way, right? I mean, we don't bake in like any special values, except that it's really neutral, right? That we want to be fair, to represent all cultures, all languages present, and it's also fun, yeah, to work with a lot of young students who are really excited about this. Like most of our team members are actually students, right? And they just came and were excited and quickly got into the new technology, helped develop it, and yeah, now that's just the base. But now we're waiting for startups and anyone who wants to turn that into products, and of course that's a whole bigger task. But yeah, we're excited about the next steps. That was just the first step this year, and then every year we plan to release an improved model. That's the plan. Yeah.
Perfect. And now sort of opening out to the entire panel, so I'm not going to point my questions to one individually, but drilling into this global approach, and I think all of you do this. I mean, Martin, you said your model has all the languages in the world. Damir, you have clients from the Middle East, and I'm sure, Stef, you have found you have investors from Europe and US. To the panel, what have you learned? What's the best approach if you're based in Switzerland to gain international traction? Is it working with other partners, with other ecosystems? Is it working with in investors? How do you go global from small Switzerland?
Yeah, I mean, so I think Switzerland has a few unfair advantages when you're building a company here, right? So if you're in Silicon Valley right now, and you're trying to hire someone, there's 50 other people that are trying to do that as well. People will on average stay with your company for 8 to 12 months. And so you don't really even have time to properly onboard them. It's the reason why OpenAI, Anthropic, and others are building their research hubs here in Zurich as well, because the talent base is quite deep, and I would say one of the best in Europe. I do think you have to build globally from day one. And so for us, that meant we had commercial teams in the United States and across Europe from day one. It meant that we don't position ourselves necessarily as one specific nationality, but as a global company. But yeah, it's really use that Swissness to go abroad and demonstrate that you're building something that actually works. But you have to be global from day one, at least is my experience.
Any other insights? How do you gain international traction? Switzerland is small.
Yeah, so I might perhaps jump in, and I've got two different angles with how I want to answer this question. The first angle is perhaps a little bit the negative angle. So when I look at Switzerland, when I see also on LinkedIn postings how certain regions, and I'm not jealous. I work in Basel. I live in St. Gallen. I was born near Zurich, so I'm really a little bit the Swiss, but Lausanne and Ticino. But when I see how Switzerland is promoting himself by saying the Zurich region is the AI hub, and then there is the Basel region, this is the pharma hub, and then there is Geneva, and then it's St. Gallen, and so on and so forth. I sometimes compare this with in Silicon Valley when I am also part at Plug and Play, where we look at many startups. And when startups from the Northern European country, from the Scandinavian countries, come to Silicon Valley, 3 countries have one brand. The brand is the Silicon Vikings. And when I see Switzerland approaching other regions, then it's more important if the company is from Zurich or from Basel or from St. Gallen. And so the negative aspect is, I think, that we should stop promoting the canton or the cities, but more Switzerland as such. And now the other aspect, and this is the positive side, you've mentioned small Switzerland. We are not that small. If I look at how we are in terms of investments, and I'm not talking now about the post-tariffs in the US, let's keep politics out of that. But investment-wise, Switzerland is big. It's huge in Abu Dhabi, it's huge in the US, it's huge everywhere. And I never had a problem to approach people, companies globally with the Swissness in the back. I think countries would have more problems with that. And so you have to stand up as a country, you have to promote this, you have to go with proud, because there is a reason why all these US tech headquarters are having their innovation centers in Switzerland as well. So I would not like to say that Switzerland is small, perhaps geographically, but everything else, no.
Perfect. And a lot of time when we have conversations, what you brought up, Damir, is this, it sounds a bit like it's decentralization taken too far, no? When every individual canton likes to shine. It is rooted in the federal structure, I guess. Would you sometimes wish, this is a question again to the panel, sometimes would you wish that it would be a Swiss AI, quantum, whatever initiative, a more coordinated approach? Would that be something you wish for?
Without knowing, and I know it's 1 month before Christmas, and so wishes become true. There is a Swiss Quantum Initiative, indeed, and perhaps as well two points to this topic. First of all, when I look at the global investment landscape, then just in the field of quantum computing, UK is investing about 3.4 billion in this field. France, over 2 billion. Germany, 3 billion. Italy, even more than 1 billion. And Switzerland, just looking at the official budgets from the official parts, it's about 80 million. Now, if we include EPFL and ETH, having more than 100 researchers within that and taking some of the budgets out there, then perhaps Switzerland is 700 million. And yet, US is 5 billion and China is 15 billion. So if I just want to compare this, and then to your introduction saying Switzerland is the global innovation champion, I think in terms of quantum computing, we could improve there. So this is the aspect of the wish where I see that perhaps I also have been mastering or behind 2 bundesrätliche Initiativen, I don't know the English term, where we wanted to persuade the Swiss government to invest more in this very important technology. Now, on the other hand, if I would have waited for the government or for some central, then QuantumBasel wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have conducted already 20 plus projects. So it's always, as you have to say, you have to find the balance. You have just to go there. And then with time, I see more and more coming up. The Swiss Quantum Initiative has been founded roughly 2 years ago. And the interesting aspect is that they also are now funding grants. Let's say there is a call with the proposal to enhance the technology readiness level, TRR, in the field of quantum science and technology in Switzerland. And so we applied for this grant together with EPH and EPFL in order to get more financing there. So I'll stop from here.
Yeah, it's a cool point, like top down versus bottom up. Just maybe adding that I also think that the bottom up approach of such initiatives is kind of, I like it more because it's also kind of faster, right? Because we saw this a bit in the AI space compared to European EU model builders, right? There it's a bit more top down, right? That the whole regulation was top down. Also the building of the AI factories and so on in the EU, it's coming, right? But it takes time, right? So in Switzerland, this was kind of really nice that it kind of grew more bottom up to see about the things that are out there. Everyone plans their research anyway, and it turned out really nice. Also from a regulation perspective, we were very positively surprised, right? Even a lot of our European friends, they were actually not able to train models yet because also the regulation situation was a bit more unclear outside Switzerland, and in Switzerland it was more clear. It was kind of simpler, because also, I mean, not faster. The regulation was also a bit slower, right? A bit more conservative, but that was a great advantage that it turned out to be more simple to build AI. Like we had this example, like, are you allowed to train AI on the web, on this content, right? What are the rules and so on? And this turned out to be very, very nicely, and a great collaboration also. That the universities approved. You will say, yeah, it's legally okay and so on. And I think this would have taken us much longer in other countries. What I hear from our colleagues. And then the other thing I want to say is multilinguality is kind of cool as well, which makes it easier to go international. Just to add a bit to the previous point, like there's plenty of languages here already. Also, our university, everyone is from all over the world. It's very international. And then so when you already have a lot of languages spoken around, it's also easier to build products that are multilingual, and so that they can also serve some cool business ideas, I guess. Yeah, I'm a scientist, not I cannot speak about businesses, but we see people do this sometimes very successfully.
Maybe going back to the title of our webinar, the infrastructure that is enabling digital sovereignty. In your view, are there things missing, or should Switzerland invest more in certain aspects of this infrastructure build out, whatever that is, from chip to supercomputers to data? Or do you think we're quite competitive on an international level? Do you have any view on that from your line of work?
Well, it's difficult to answer the competitiveness question, perhaps competitiveness compared to what and in what sense. What I want to say today, let's say, we had a delegation from Saudi Arabia here, about 30 different kind of industries, from Saudi Aramco down to industries, tourism, and so on and so forth. And we all read the news about the billion investments which are conducted there. Perhaps some of you also read the news or are not that Shine number 3. This is a supercomputer number 18, and the performance has been inaugurated yesterday at KAUST, at the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. Yet the Saudis, when they came here, they were stunned what we already have. I mean, it's not just a physical quantum system. It's not just a couple of hundred GPUs. It's not just also CPUs, but also that we are in talks. We've got the Alps supercomputer, which has already been mentioned. And we've got everything here already in place and ready to use, whereas in other destinations, perhaps sometimes they're just thinking and they're coming there. Yes, they've got other kind of investments, and there is definitely top-down kind of investment. Yet we can be proud of what we already have. We just have to find the right balance between the digital sovereignty. So having the hardware does not mean that you are sovereign already, because on the hardware there is some software. And if the software goes over the cloud, and then if one of these cloud providers worldwide has got problems, we aren't that digital sovereign. So this is why initiatives like Apertus and so are great. But one has always to keep in mind to know what is really digital sovereign, and there where it's not sovereign, perhaps to know how the rules are, what am I allowed to do or not. So we can't relax.
I think from my perspective, most of the technologies that came out of Silicon Valley were net new, right? So cloud was net new, social was net new, mobile was net new, and we adopted these technologies, and we're now, at the behest of the people that built those products. I do think for AI, it's somewhat of a different game because it's really disrupting existing industries, similar to how electric vehicles really disrupted the German car industry. And so I think this time around, we need to be a little bit careful to not be too laissez-faire about it, and seriously invest. And we're actually one of the few countries in Europe that has enough money to do so, right? Like the Brits are, borderline bankrupt, if I understand the news correctly. Europe has a big debt pile, whereas Switzerland has a lot of firepower, both through the government as well as through instruments like the Swiss National Bank. So I think for me, there would be a few things. I would pick a few places where you really want to win. Like we want to win in biopharma. We probably want to win in robotics. I don't know why we sold parts of ABB off to Japanese, but pick a few industries where you really want to win, and then provide stable long-term funding for these areas, and really go and invest, right? I think on infrastructure itself, that's probably not, I don't think large data centers in the Alps are the best idea. I do think there's other places like, talent and immigration. There's lots of top researchers that are, currently active in the United States that are trying to move to other places. Can we host, the Broad Institute at EPFL or whatever the relevant areas are that we want to win in? And then I think for us, particularly being in biotech, translational infrastructure for pharma and biotech. So can you make it easier, to run clinical trials, get access to biobanks, which is something the UK has done really well, to train machine learning models, like pilot facilities, regulatory sandboxes, those types of things you could start doing today. I think Switzerland, at least from my perspective right now, when I look at the political landscape, it's just too comfortable. It's a bit surprising when Swiss people are like, we have no money, because that's just not true.
We're sort of slightly touching on a political discussion on the, what do we want to invest in, and what do we need to prioritize. But maybe just before we sort of, I think we do a last rounds in 2-3 minutes and then open up for questions. But this international aspect obviously is a key component of all your daily activities. Damir, you mentioned Saudi Arabia. I mean, Stef, you're clearly operating the US as well as the UK. And Martin, I'm sure you have a global footprint as well. What maybe in this time of age where we have to look for partners, what has been proven so successful when it comes to partners in your line of work? Do you have any view on that, on how to best partner to have this global reach, or any insights, success stories maybe to share how to go global with a base in Switzerland? Maybe Martin, when it comes, excuse me. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no. So if you're a startup that sells into business to business SaaS products, so software for large corporations, I would say start selling somewhere else first. And that's not because the Swiss don't want to buy your software, but they're probably not the first buyers of your software. Where Americans are typically a little bit more, let's try it out and see if it works. Switzerland is very, detail, quality, reliability oriented, and typically the first version of your product is not going to be up to Swiss standards. And so make sure that you're sort of global from day one, and meet customers abroad. And then once you have the case studies, the Swiss will go and deploy it, and will actually be very consistent about that, whereas Americans might stop using you or swap you out for some other thing. But I do think that was a big lesson for us. It's hard to get into large global pharma as a small player. It's a lot easier on the East Coast in the US.
A story that I've heard multiple times, Stef. I mean, something that's been said again and again, and it seems to be interesting. The interesting aspect is the Swiss are very good in praising when it comes for AI, for example, about their research capability and innovation. But when it comes then actually to buying local AI products, there's much more skepticism. It almost seems like if there's an American label on it, they will buy it. If it's Swiss made, they're like, well, I'm not too sure. Sort of a different take on what you just said, Stef. Yeah. And maybe Martin, you're a researcher, you work in a global network, I would assume. Is the international angle important for keeping on top of developments in LLMs? Or can you draw on the local talent and be sort of more self-sufficient?
No, it's both, right? I mean, you're right. Talent is absolutely the most important thing, for sure, in research and also in building AI stuff. And there, I mean, yeah, one way is to hire from local universities and so on. But I mean, also our own student population is also very international. Research is global, so that's great. And also, yeah, we also really try to attract talents from abroad for our projects, and usually this starts with some kind of research collaboration and building things together. And I also want to mention the open source angle, that the open source community, of course, is also global, right? And that's also something that I think fits well for us for building LLMs and allows to very quickly make progress. And sometimes the open source community is very big, so it can sometimes even make progress sometimes faster than a big company, where it's maybe they have their very narrow focus, they do exactly this and so on, do it well. But yeah, if you have a big community and collaboration with open source is also very positive for us, and the same for research. So I think it works well, and then sometimes we also attract them to join us in Zurich or Lausanne, and worked well so far.
I personally never had problems to travel as a Swiss with the message to companies we would like to talk with you, because Switzerland always has been looked as a neutral country. We know that we've got with these institutions an excellent talent pool. And we also know that we've got not just the life science, but also the financial services industry, and the strong backbone is as well our industry. And by the way, perhaps referring to the question from before, I mean, yes, Taiwan does produce a lot of chips, but are you aware on what kind of machines some of those chips are being produced, and who made these kind of machines? There is a lot of Swissness behind that as well. So sometimes you oversee this. There are perhaps other countries doing it. So I from my perspective, yes, this does not mean that every single company signs a contract with us. But in my travel, in my globalization, be it in Singapore, be it in US, in Washington, in San Francisco, or in the Middle East, I never had problems to find open doors to discuss potential projects or potential ideas. And perhaps another, you've asked about secrets. So I will share a secret with you. We are amongst us. I always bring some gold with me. No, not the kind of gold somebody was brought to a president of a country, but this kind of gold. And when you share this kind of gold, I hope you see, because I don't see my picture, you bring some of this chocolate along, then you've always got a good start. Why? Because the chocolate can be shared by the business person at home with his kids or with her kids. And then you already have the kind of personal contact with this person. He always smiles like that, and this is always a good entry point into a business discussion. Sorry, call it bribery. It's chocolate.
And it's easier to transport than fondue. That you can share as well. But that's already a great start to a wrap-up session. So if all the people now listening to our webinar, if you had to give them sort of your single advice what to do if they want to come to Switzerland and then have these values of bottom up, of decentralization, of new neutrality work in their favor, what would be your first advice? What to do if they want to come here and gain traction in Switzerland? Do you have any other secrets besides Swiss chocolate? I open that to the round. How would you lure someone here and make them feel comfortable?
Perhaps I might jump in. I've built up a company within 3 years, we've got roughly 20 employees. We've got quantum physicists. They joined us from Goldman Sachs. We've got some coming from CERN. We've got people from IBM. We've got AI specialists, and they are coming here to Switzerland. They are even moving here to Basel or near to Basel with their families, because here they've got this, I don't call it job security, but they've got all this infrastructure, this innovation idea on a long-term, a more stable base as in other countries. And therefore, it's easy to find these kind of talents. I'm not now talking about the AI specialists. Everybody's looking for the best AI people at the moment. But I, from my perspective, feel it quite comfortable when you look for this kind of good talents. They come to Switzerland, they come to us because they can here use this kind of best technology, and they know we think globally.
Maybe move to you, Stef. Do you agree? Is it easy for you to attract talent based on those Swiss premises?
Yeah, I mean, I can obviously compare between Amsterdam hiring people directly in the US and Switzerland. And Switzerland is quite attractive to most people. There's a couple of things I would say. Professionally, there's a lot of opportunity here, both in startups as well as in scale-ups. Like if you come from the Valley and knowing that you could join, Google with a couple of thousand people or Facebook or whatever, it's less of a risk than maybe going to Amsterdam, where the tech companies are more the locals, if you will. I think secondly, quality of life here is amazing. I think the world is in a bit of a chaotic place right now, and both globally, but also within Europe, Switzerland is this island of stability right now that a lot of people feel very attracted to. It's very international, right? It's closest to, I guess, Singapore that you can get in Europe, and so people do feel very welcome here. And we pay well, which is helpful too, right? So it's not hard to get people. It's sometimes a little tricky, to get visas and that kind of stuff. So if you have like some top researcher from OpenAI, they have like 15 exploding offers, and you first have to go get a permit. That's a little bit tricky, but in general, we've not had any trouble getting people to come here.
Yeah, I have not much to add to that, but just maybe one aspect might be the language. I started to think more about all these different languages and so on, and I actually don't speak the local language in where I am. I don't speak French. Our apparatus speaks much better French than I, but I'm just saying that this is not a problem, right? So you can get super easily along with English as well, because it's already so international. So I do everything in English, but even despite I'm being Swiss actually. So.
Perfect. Maybe I see we have a few questions besides many AI note takers joining. There's now a lot of attention from AI on those webinars. But maybe just as a very quick wrap up, and I sort of promised initially that we're going to talk a bit the Swiss values, and all of the panelists have repeatedly stressed a few of the aspects, this bottom-up approach to innovation, the neutrality that helps in a very fractured world, as well as an international outlook from day one. It's easy to cooperate with global ecosystems. So those are all things that are really Switzerland's strength in the face of not having any grandiose scheme that could be trumpeted by a president and backed up with billions and trillions. We don't have that, but we have all those opportunities, and I think also a lot of freedom to engage and explore things, as Martin Jaggi also said, in developing models. And those are all things that are valuable to anyone interested in innovation. I have now one question that is more about trade agreements with Switzerland. And Tepa, as Damir, you're nodding, he's asking, building on the theme of going global, how do the panelists think about leveraging the trade agreement Switzerland executed? Is that something you have experience with? Do trade agreements help? Anyone? Or Damir, you want to try?
Absolutely. I've been now the couple of last years and this year in Davos, and I've also been witnessing when Switzerland signed this last trade agreement. And in Davos, I had the opportunity to talk to the Indian government, the governmental delegation. And by the end of the week, instead of flying home, due to the Swiss parliamentarian Nicolas Kucker, we've invited them to come to Basel. So they postponed the flights. They came to Basel, and we signed a letter of intent with the state of Telangana, and later followed with some business in Karnataka. So Bangalore and Hyderabad, the two main cities there, in order to help them to ramp up a hub for AI and quantum computing, similar to what we did here today. This wouldn't have been possible without this kind of engagement from Swiss parliamentarians and without these kind of agreements. And right now we are also expanding our network to South America because we want to build, to help, to support, to build up something there as well. There is no trade agreement yet in place, but some things like that helps. And so we can debate about politics and regulations, yet sometimes it really helps when you've got politicians like that supporting your cause.
Great. And just on the note of Davos, obviously anyone interested in going to Davos, they can reach out to me. I'm organizing events. That's just a very shameless self-promotion. But there's another question addressed to Martin. Someone is asking, great question, how can a foreign or Swiss company engage with Alpertus, and for what kind of AI projects?
Yeah, that's an easy one because the thing is completely open source, right? So the data is open and the model is also open. So you can just download it, yeah, the model and the data and build stuff with it. So it's also a license is completely open. Commercial license is okay. That's one way, and then yeah, start building with it and so on. And then we are interested to hear feedback and to hear what people build with it and help us then every year improve the model and build the next version. We're working on a thinking model at the moment that should be out in a few months. So.
And how can they follow you? What's the best way? Where are you present? What platform?
GitHub, Hugging Face, or send us an email. There's also a website of Alpertus. I'll put it in the chat. Yeah.
Perfect. There's one question for you, Damir. It says, you mentioned the importance of investing in technologies that can prevent Switzerland from becoming deindustrialized. And beyond quantum technology, are there other areas you're actively looking at, and which ones are most impactful? You know, are you looking beyond quantum, or are you solely focused on quantum?
Well, two things. First of all, yes, we are a hub for quantum computing and AI. So as the name says, we are focusing on quantum and AI. So there are a lot of different kind of AI companies. Our differentiation there is that we bring a little bit of quantum within these algorithms, something which is quite a differentiator. So when it comes to time series forecasting, with the help of quantum computing, we think that we can improve some AI solutions. And so the second aspect is that if you look at the most important technologies I see from Switzerland with the Roland Siegwart's Institute at the ETH, robotics is very important as AI, and in my perspective, quantum is. And what one can't predict is the combination of two technologies. So this is when it becomes interesting. One technology as such, you can perhaps predict and forecast. But if two technologies come together, then the prediction is quite, and that something big will happen. And so I think the combination of quantum and AI is such a combination, the same as AI and robotics, or is another combination. I think in both of these fields, Switzerland is also playing a role. The best in all fields, I think, at the moment in robotics, of all these three. Sorry, Martin, this is my personal. We are not world champion in AI yet.
Interesting. This is actually another question that came. It was directed to Stef, but it's actually asking exactly that question. What areas do you see as strongest candidates for Switzerland to become, a leader in innovation? Besides, I mean, robotics you mentioned. Also, we have quantum AI. Any other things you think Switzerland would be suited to become a world leader as such?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's places where we are world leaders and we kind of want to continue to be one. And then there are places where I think the jury's still out and we could win, but we do require a little bit of investment. As a guy that works in biology, obviously, I think, pharma and biotech is an area where we have a very strong position, right? We have with Novartis and Roche, two of the top 10 globals here locally in Switzerland. But we do need to maintain that position, and I do think that requires more investment. If you look at the number of companies that get started in China, the number of companies that get started in the US, like in Zurich and in Basel, it's still not enough, right? We're too much leaning on these two big giants to sort of carry us forward, and that's going to be tricky over time. So that's an area that I would invest in, and I think we could really win there. Second, to be, and I think this is true for most places, I think we've kind of already lost AI as Europe. And so we should probably go do the next thing. I think what Damir is doing with quantum seems like a really great next thing, right? We just don't know when we'll have the first sort of commercially viable large quantum computers that you can easily deploy. But that will happen in the next some amount of years. And so we just need to deploy capital to make sure that that happens here and not somewhere else. But yeah, I do think, and robotics would be another one. There's some really good examples of startups here as well. And obviously the work that has been done at both EPFL and ETH is amazing. We have Activide. Those are industries we're very good at. So those I would continue to defend as well. But I think the more general theme is, do we want to win, or are we just comfortable with what we have right now? And I think the conclusion that I'm drawing, if you look at, for example, startups that are doing really well in AI in Switzerland, they are not funded by Swiss organizations. They're funded by foreigners, right? And so we're not taking this opportunity as serious as I think we should.
Again, something, Stef, that has come up quite a lot. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the later stage funding still is foreign funding and not Swiss funding. I'm conscious of time. Maybe we do one last round before finishing up. There's no more question as far as I can tell. Alpertus has a website. There's one more question that just came in. It's a longer one, so let me quickly read it. It's addressing what we've just been discussing, sort of contrasting the bottom-up approach in Switzerland versus I like to call it brute force innovation, by throwing literally billions and trillions at a technology. That person saying, well, you guys are obviously all active in various technologies. How do each of you view the impact of these funding disparities? And what approaches do you see for overcoming them? How do you deal with that? Anyone wants to take that one?
Maybe. I'm quite optimistic actually. I don't agree that it's because it's not about the amount of money, but it's about how you use it, what you use it for, that it's really reaching the purpose. And in research, this works pretty well, I would say. Has always worked well, and so the innovation is happening. And if the country is a small country, right, but then if a larger scale cooperation is needed, that can also happen, right? We see examples like CERN and so on, where just because Switzerland is a smaller country doesn't mean that it's not able to collaborate with others in the more international scheme. So I would say I'm optimistic, but I'll let the others comment to know more on the business side.
And I fully agree with you, Martin, that for academia, it's not an issue, right? It is still the federal institutes that are making most of the headlines and not the localized ones. I'm more referring to, investment in companies, right? And
Oh, you're right.
what's really sad right now is that sort of all that money we're deploying in ETH and EPFL is going into, you know, Zurich is a hub for American scale-ups right now, for Google, for Anthropic, for OpenAI, right? There's no homegrown Swiss companies that are scaling to 100 million Swiss francs, 1 billion Swiss francs in revenue. That just doesn't happen. We are funding most of the brains that are building that for other you know, countries, and so I do think there's an opportunity there to have, you know, whether it's like an 11 labs that do like, you know, voice assistants, or, you know, there's lots of verticals that we can still win in, and it doesn't have to be OpenAI per se, but you know, that is, at least in my view, just, you know, it's maybe a handful of companies at this point.
Perhaps if I may also, as a final conclusion from my side, or final remark, it's not always about money from another perspective. So one can start also projects in the field of AI and quantum computing with small money, with small budgets. But the most important thing is just do it, start. And this is perhaps something we are sometimes lacking a little bit. We always think, okay, let's wait, and then we'll wait until it also has to be mentioned, until it's perfect. Hey, I mean, the biggest difference between thinking and well, I just want to say, just start with it. If you don't know what quantum computing is, I also have some kind of marketing a little bit. We can provide you with training. We can exactly tell you what kind of use cases perhaps are good for AI plus with quantum. We also can provide access. We do this for universities, for all different kind of companies, also quantum access, so that you can play around and have a sandpit. This is sometimes that I see in Silicon Valley. They've got this kind of sandpits for different kind of technologies. This is what we can provide, and then just start with a project. So most important, don't think about it, just do it, start and learn. And then I'm also very optimistic about Switzerland's future. So yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. I think we just landed on the dot. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And I'm handing over back to Sirpa.
Yes, also from my side, big thank you to Damir, Stef, Martin, and Alexander for this open discussion about Switzerland and its tech ecosystem. Thank you all for joining us this live session. So this live session was not all. So when you signed up, we also gonna have 4 podcasts with experts and a tokenization report by HomeofBlockchain for you. Access to those you get via email that we're gonna send out after this session. So with this, I would like to close and wishing you all a great evening. Thank you.